if we created a ratio between omega 6 and omega 3 intake, that ratio now is much higher than it was probably 50 years ago, certainly higher than 100 years ago. And people have estimated that if we go back even further, by which I mean, the sort of diets that, thinking about diets that it's believed humans evolved on, that the ratio was very different then from how it is now. So it is argued that, as far as the fatty acids are concerned, we're existing on a dietary makeup which is very different from the dietary makeup that humans evolved on, and therefore it may not be perfectly compatible with our health. We've actually evolved against a different dietary background.
Interesting. Yeah, I always find that topic, and this is maybe a little bit of a tangent, an interesting one in general, because there's kind of the conversation around like a natural diet versus a novel diet. And the way I sort of see it is like we all die regardless. So like either one of these probably have trade-offs that are going to result in potentially risk factors in one area or the other. And sometimes it comes down to like, well, which risk factor are you trying to account for versus the
Yeah,
other? And I think like maybe saturated fats versus polyunsaturated fats are maybe one of those examples where possibly you can lower your omega 6 intake by switching to a saturated fat, but then you also may increase your cholesterol and therefore potentially
yeah,
have a higher risk of
yeah,
cardiovascular
yeah.
disease.
I, I think your point is a really good one, Zach, and of course you're right. So I think one thing that's happened is we are living longer, and we're living longer for lots of reasons. Some of them, I think, related to the fact that our diets. We can criticize our diets right now in 2024, but generally speaking, diets are better for us in the West, certainly, than they were 100 years ago. So diet is part of it. Of course, we have other things. We have vaccinations now. We have lots of drugs. We have more hygienic living conditions. Um, we have central heating to keep us warm in winter. All of that stuff. So um, we have created a situation where we remain healthier for longer and we live for longer. So, life expectancy has gone up. What's interesting right now, again, this will just be a tangent for me, Zach, is that, there's a concern actually that life expectancy is starting to go down because of the prevalence of obesity in the population. So actually, we've got to a point where we've sort of got on top of things, and you know, people were once considered old, when they hit 60.
Mhm.
But now, people, it's common for most people in our countries to live well into their 70s, maybe their 80s. So life expectancy increased a lot in the 20th century. But now in the 21st century, we actually have got to a point where, there is concern that in some groups of the population, life expectancy is going to go down again. And we have this problem of obesity in children, which is going to impact them, I think. So, my point initially was we're living longer. And what we want really is we want people to live healthier as well as living longer. So there is a mismatch. So people will talk about what's called health span. So lifespan is just how long we live. Health span is how long we live healthy. And, we want to make sure people have a good health span. It's no good living to, 85 if you've spent 20 years um, in a very bad state of health. That's not good for the person, it's not good for their family, it's not good for society. So, this, of course, is behind the drive for us to understand the factors that promote healthy aging, test those interventions, and get to a better place. But I think your point that initiated this bit of our discussion is a very good one. That at the moment, humans are mortal. We will die eventually. Some people will die as a result of heart disease. Some people will die as a result of cancer. Some people will die as a result of dementia. Some people will die for other less common reasons. I mean, they're the three big killers these days. Um, so I think it is a trade off. And if you think about human evolution, um, evolutionarily, we needed, like all animals, we needed to get to the stage where we would reproduce and look after our young. And then when they were capable, you know, the older people didn't matter anymore. So a shorter lifespan was not really an issue when the biggest driver was to survive. For women to survive childbirth, for children to survive childbirth and infancy, and get to a stage where humans would reproduce and the species would continue. So I think genetically we've been set up for these earlier life encounters and challenges. And you could argue, our diet that we evolved on was the diet that also favored, I'm going to call it early life health, if you like, the ability, the resilience to overcome the challenges. And they might have been infectious challenges, for example. Now we have vaccinations. We give all our kids vaccinations from when they're born. That's brilliant. That protects them against infectious disease. Therefore, for us in the West in general, mortality from infectious disease is not a worry. Of course, in less developed countries, that's still a big worry. But if we go back in our own evolution, even in the 19th century, many children died of infectious disease in the United States and in the United Kingdom because that was still a big problem. We've overcome that now. But just getting back to your point, maybe what we've evolved on, which is important for resilience early in life, isn't necessarily ideal for prolonging health span and healthy aging. So I think I agree with you very much that we have trade offs. We have trade offs, and we have possibilities of dietary components that raise cholesterol, that raise blood pressure, that help, that promote inflammation. And we have dietary components that lower cholesterol, that lower blood pressure, and that mitigate inflammation. And we've got to be somewhere in there so our physiology is working, but we don't become pathological.